Holly?
All right. Hello and welcome to the November 15th, 2021 meeting of the Master Plan Implementation Committee.
What?
Just to read the standard boilerplate here. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting of the Master Plan Implementation Committee will be conducted via remote means. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandoverma.gov. This meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so on their televisions by tuning to Comcast Channel 8 or Verizon Channel 26, or online at www.northandercam.org. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of North Andover website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of the proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. If the public would like to participate in public meetings, please email your question or comment prior to or during the meeting to jstrauss@northandoverma.gov. The question comment will be read during the proceedings and responded to accordingly. Yay. All right, with that, I guess we should first of all figure out who would like to take or who is willing to offer the services of taking meeting minutes.
I can take meeting minutes this meeting. I haven't done it yet. This is Holly.
All right, thank you, Holly. All right, so correct me if I'm going the wrong way here, Andrew, but I assume we should take attendance first.
Yes, roll call attendance.
Roll call. All right. I'm just going.
You just want to call people out and just have them verbally affirm that they are here.
Yep. All right. I'm just seeing who's on my screen here. All right. So, George Keller.
Here.
Meredith Barnes-Cook.
Here.
Chris Nobley.
Here.
Holly Williams.
Here.
Jay Dowd.
Here.
Stan Limpert.
Here.
Kelly Cormier.
Here.
And Jonathan Strauss here.
And John, I noted that, or I saw that Sean McDonough says that he'll be about 15 minutes late.
Okay.
So he should be arriving a little later in the meeting.
All right. If he shows up, we'll add him to the attendance. All right. As far as public comments, I have not received any to date. So I will hopefully, looking at the agenda, I don't think this is going to take too long tonight, but I do want to ask if anybody wants to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from our October 25th meeting as written.
So moved.
I'll second that.
All right. All those in favor of the motion, I'll go through the list here. George Keller.
In favor.
Meredith Barnes-Cook.
Yes.
Chris Nobley.
Yes.
Holly Williams.
Yes.
Jay Dowd.
Yes.
Stan Limpert.
Yes.
Kelly Cormier.
Yes.
And myself, John Strauss. Yes. All right. Anybody dissent? Hearing none, I say the motion is passed. All right. So I just categorized a couple things as old business, just to change it up a little, keep us on our toes. So on Thursday, October 28th, there was the MassDOT design public hearing for the Route 114 corridor, where they presented their 25% design. Again, this is just for informational purposes. There is a presentation on the town's website relative to that if you haven't caught up on it. I don't know where they stand as far as taking public comment at this point if that's still open or closed. But if you haven't and you have the time, feel free to take a look. Just from my review, many elements that we spell out in the master plan are accommodated, especially the non-vehicular accommodations for bicyclists, pedestrians, and whatnot. So, again, that's just for information purposes. Apologize for the dog. One second. All right. Sorry about the dog. And then the other thing I had on the list was the community preservation committee. Oh, sorry. There's a dog walking in the neighborhood.
John, just one thought back on the 125 there, and Andrew, maybe you can give a little more perspective on this. I know it's not exactly a town project, right? We don't really control it, but does it make sense for us to again sort of put that under the umbrella of things that people can access if they're looking at the master plan implementation or the master plan in general, that there's some sort of a direct link or something to that? Because I'm thinking about, we've got this and we've got 114, and we're looking for input. It kind of runs through our neighborhood, if I can use that term. And I'm just wondering if that's a way to kind of keep it visible. If that makes sense. I don't know. What do people think?
I would say on this one, because it's a state project, it's a little bit of a different animal. Because a lot of what we can absolutely evaluate it, like we've done before. I just think because of the how it's being administered, where it's the chief proponent's the state, not the municipality, that the benefits aren't as great as they would if it was a local project. But I'll defer to everybody else too.
So I would think it's a good idea. Sorry, because as you said yourself, John, people should be aware of it because it does intersect a lot with the master plan. So using your own words, the fact that it intersects with the master plan, it's not the end. I don't think it's that big of a deal to just make it one more place where the citizens can find the information, because it becomes overwhelming when you have to go here for this and there for that and there for this. If there's a couple documents that are all inclusive, I think that that's a good thing, rather than make them piecemeal, go here and then go there. If they're perusing around the master plan, which however many there are, at least there's like a one-stop shop that they can say, oh, I didn't know there was a 114 corridor plan. Let me click in and see about this. And then it says it's a state plan. But if anything, I think the frustration with the citizens of this town is whether it's an opinion or not, whether we believe it or not, is sometimes the lack of information that gets out there with some other things. So I think putting it out in multiple places is a good thing. And it is a public project and it does impact the master plan. So I would argue to put it in there. That would be my, 5 cents versus 2 cents. But
yeah, this is Kelly. I would agree. I think a big part of our charter, right, is communication. And anything that relates to the master plan, it would seem this certainly impacts us, even though we don't have influence because it's not a town project. To do that and distill that information a little bit, I know it would, as someone who would have to look at it and try to understand it, would make it that much easier. And it's just one more communication channel to reach people.
John, the one thing I would say, having listened to that session, several things stood out to me that the townspeople, citizens might want to be aware of. First is, I think there's an unresolved issue between the Royal Crest redeveloper and the state about the amount of access that the project will have to Route 114. It's not clear that they're even talking about how that's going to work. I think the developer seems to feel they're going to have numerous access points to 114, and it's not clear that that's what the state's thinking at all. So that's an issue. The second thing that I was surprised by was how quickly the state development team turned their back on a pedestrian overpass for Merrimack students. They very flatly said, that's between two private parties. That's none of our business. If they want to do something about that, they can. That's up to them. So I was sort of surprised by that too, that they just didn't even want to talk about it. So that was a little bit surprising. And then the third thing that I hadn't heard ever much about until that meeting was the amount of imminent domain taking they're going to need to do to widen that road. They're going to be cutting off a bunch of people's property up 114 there, and that's the first I'd ever heard about that. I hadn't thought of. I suppose I could have figured that out if I would have thought about it. But that could be kind of a hornet's nest too. As you start doing that, it's just arbitrarily taking the front off of somebody's lot, because you want the land. So I don't know. It just seems like there's some issues that at least the public should be aware of, and maybe we could, to Kelly's point, just information. We're not saying anything's right or wrong or good or bad. Just here's some issues, right?
So first of all, it didn't take much convincing to convince me that we can evaluate this. That's more than happy to do it. And I completely agree with the idea of let's give people information, preferably in easily digestible format, because of and listening to what you remember, Stan, is those are normal, rational questions people ask. When they mention, because I recently on another project that I'm working on in a different town that's similar process through MassDOT. Though they term it eminent domain, there is a clear-cut process in which they do land acquisitions, whether it's a permanent taking, a permanent easement, or actual land acquisition of a whole entire property or a portion of a property that they take on a temporary basis for construction purposes, and then it gets restored and the easement goes away after construction, after a year after construction or whatnot. That eminent domain is a catch-all that they used in that presentation, and there's a lot more nuance to it that wasn't explained. So that's exactly something, when the public reading it, they don't get a feel for what's going on behind the scenes there. And I know that the connection from one side of the street to the other has been discussed a bunch of times. And the take I had from that is that the state can only design for what they know is certain. With Royal Crest still up in the air, the project hasn't even been put forward to the town for any selection at this point. So the state cannot make accommodate. They can go to a certain degree, but they cannot accommodate a full build out of Royal Crest because they don't have an approved plan, and that goes for any project the state does. So it's a fine line that the state has to balance, because you don't want to completely undersize your project and not future proof it as much as possible, but at the same time, without something concrete there, they can't accommodate that, which in turn puts the onus on a private developer such as Royal Crest in this case, that if you're going to generate these traffic numbers, it's on you to mitigate them, not the state. And that's how it kind of gets couched. So those are some of the considerations. But again, as far as, not that we should be advocates necessarily, but presenting an objective analysis of the project, of the 114 corridor project, under the auspices of how does it fit into the master plan. Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
it won't take much convincing to get me on that same page here. So
how will, in theory, not specific to this, but in theory, when the sequencing is in this way that the state's ready to move forward with its plan for a state highway, and there's a local private development initiative that isn't ready yet. So how does that work? Does that mean the state moves forward on its plan, the private development that is thing, and then the private development has to take care of the things that normally would have been part of the state plan, or does the state plan go into like a change management moment where it gets revised based on the plan?
It depends on timing. It depends on
Okay.
timing. Like I said, the state's going to design based off of what they know for certain. You know, for all we know, the economy could tank tomorrow. Royal Crest doesn't get developed, and now you've made all these accommodations for something that's not going to be built. Like so instead, if they want to build something, Royal Crest or another property along the route, you know, they have to do the traffic analysis, do the traffic studies, do the design. You know, how do we modify the design to work with what the state's providing?
I think at the end of the day, put it all together. You know, some of this is really about just getting information out there, and then people are going to be reacting to it. And there's, you know, some of it requires understanding of processing and so forth. I think we're just at the simple point of, do we find ways to increase people's access to this information? And that may give us a little bit of a roadmap of how people respond to it too, right? I mean, we could help the state and ourselves with this. So I think trying to make it clear however we post it, and maybe Dan, this is more on you, but you know, depending upon how we post it, we can try and drive any comments back to the state, and you know, we get an echo of that, and that's, you know, ties into, you know, our mission here too, right? Our mission here is to not necessarily be the foil for everything, but facilitate, right? So I would just be my idea simply to, you know,
As
put
long
it
as
in.
we, yeah, and because it's so easy for us to mushroom out in our scope here, you know, it's
Right.
But oh, Andrew.
Hey, how's it going? No, I didn't want to interrupt a good conversation, so I just decided to use the handy dandy raise hand button. Anyway,
I acknowledge your hand.
no worries. So I hate to be the guy. I have to do this. I have to be the pushback guy, and it doesn't mean that we don't ultimately get to the place that you guys were deciding you want to go. It's just I'm just going to give you my input, and you can take it or leave it on the side of the road. Either way. So I think that, you know, just to the issue of like, and you were just bringing it up a second ago, John, like mushrooming scope and you know, mission creep potential, things like that. Maybe you didn't use the word mission creep, but just thinking about, you know, what this body should be focusing on, and then with respect to how we're going to look at this project. I mean, there are definitely some master plan priorities and strategies that are very clearly aligned with the work that's being done in the Route 125 corridor project. So like, I'll just tick off a couple just that I see right off the bat under the transportation section. Evaluate the feasibility of increasing crosswalk frequency and visibility on major travel corridors such as Route 114, Mass Ave, et cetera, et cetera. So obviously part of this project is introducing new crosswalks. Couple sidewalk and crosswalk improvements with pedestrian scale lighting to increase visibility and safety. Work with MassDOT to incorporate welcoming and beautification improvements to the anticipated improvement project along Route 114. Evaluate safety and congestion improvements along key roadway corridors and intersection improvements to promote safer travel speeds, improve safety at key intersections, and create a safer and more connected sidewalk network. So I'm just rattling off a few right there. And to me, it feels like it's more of like a black and white thing. Are these things happening or are they not happening? Because if they're not happening, that's out of step with the master plan. If they are happening, then the master plan is being followed and adhered to. And I think the idea, in my mind at least, that the Route 114 project's happening at all is really sort of substantiating or legitimizing the idea that these things are happening. And, to Chris's point about wanting to get information out there to the public and make sure people know, that there's a process in place and that there's a lot of public information to be had as far as this project goes. I mean, I feel like that's out there. I mean, of course, there's going to be a pocket of people that may not know about it, or, things can always be spread wider. But I think it's a good thing for the Master Plan Implementation Committee to promote, to say, hey, there's this process in place. MassDOT's looking at Route 114. They're just 25% of the way through the design. Here's the link to their webpage. It ticks off these priorities. But I don't know if like a full-blown in-depth analysis of it really necessarily would need to be done. But that's my take.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was starting to get to, Andrew, was I don't know, there are questions that should be directed, but I don't think they necessarily should be come to us, or we should be the ones providing the answers. I think that's something that should fall more on, I imagine, DPW, and all the minutiae that's involved on that. But that said, if we were going to perform an objective analysis of how it matches the goals and elements of the master plan, I don't see an issue with that. I don't think it's a hard undertaking on our part, because it's pretty much transportation focused. There might be other elements involved, but for the most part, it's transportation.
And one more thing I'll just add real quick is just that, we went through somewhat of an exercise a while back. I think it was started with Gene and myself, and Dan, I think, may have had some input into this, where we had that big chart and like all of these priorities were out there, and we tried to identify the projects that corresponded with some of these strategies. And so I think it's less of a matter of the project and where it corresponds to the strategies, but it's more about the strategies and what projects correspond to those strategies, if that makes sense. So having some sort of master document in place and having that up on a website or what have you, and just showing people these are the projects that are corresponding to these strategies. And certainly the Route 114 project fits into a handful of those strategies. That makes sense.
No, it does. And actually, that's real quick. I think that that's a preview of coming attractions in this meeting. So, sorry, didn't mean to cut
Sorry,
off.
John.
Yep.
No, just thinking about this, and then also thinking about the things that before the planning board and discussion. One of the biggest topics that's up right now is overall traffic impact in the town. That seems to be some major concern, at least of a lot of people. And I think anything that we can do as it relates to the master plan to help either look at information, look at projects, give a more holistic view of the impact of traffic changes, good or bad improvements, so that all of us make sure it's going in the right direction and that gets communicated is a good thing. I think there's could not be a better. I think it's a great use of our time for anything that we can do to help look and synthesize information about traffic impacts in time. I think one of the hard things, and Andrew, I talked to you about this before on something else. One of the difficult things that I'm hearing is we're looking at all of these different projects in piecemeal, which is how we needs to get done, and those impacts and anything that we can do, and maybe the 114 corridor study could be one of those avenues to look more end-to-end impact of these multiple things and take a look and understand the impacts to the average person in North Andover is a good thing. That's my 7 cents.
Cool. So I'll throw this out here as an action from this is, do we want to basically divide ourselves up into our subgroups that we've established and do a quick analysis of the 114 plan? Do we need more information first relative to the 114 plan? You guys tell me. I mean, like I said, I'm somewhat versed in it, but I don't know where everybody else is and where your comfort level is in doing so.
So what would the outcome be,
Yeah.
John? Are you talking about applying the framework to it,
Yeah.
or what? Okay, so
Yeah.
Probably in subgroups, I would think, or I mean,
Like
Well,
I said, some of them may not be even, may have zero applicability. So, like I said, I don't think it's a heavy lift. I think the heaviest lift would be on probably Jay Meredith and myself.
may I suggest this, which is, and maybe it's a little bit to Andrew's point. Unfortunately, I dropped off there for a minute, but I think because again, there's still a long way to go with this. We don't have a lot of control. There's only a certain amount of input. Maybe the first step is just getting information out there, rather than an analysis. I don't know. I'm just suggesting that.
John, I sent you and Meredith a couple of thoughts on the page. Did you get that by any chance?
I saw. I thought it was a discussion point for tonight.
I don't know if you want to hold off on that. You just mentioned previews of coming attractions. I don't know if this was about the page. This was my sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I was going to address that. That's one of the that's under. I have that under new business.
Oh, okay, because this conversation, I think, dovetails into that proposal of what our page should look like.
Yep.
Does that make sense? I don't know if you want to talk about that
No,
now.
absolutely. So I think it's there's two ways to look at it. Is one that we've done a thing where we've evaluated what 2 or 3 projects or 2 or 3 initiatives, I should say, because one wasn't a project, one was a proposal. And we did a independent analysis of where it fit. We did the framework analysis and said, all right, what goals is this hitting? Flip that around is an overall look at all the elements and strategies in the master plan and giving you a status update on where each one is. So, one's a small picture, one's a big picture. So I think armed with the knowledge that we've gained from doing the small analysis will help us frame it big picture wise. Where do we currently stand? And I'll show something as we as we get to that item, relative to that, what my initial thoughts are. So
About the look of our page.
yeah.
Okay. I'll wait then.
So so like I said, do we, if we were to email everybody a spreadsheet, a link to a spreadsheet, can we break up and just do a quick analysis, a framework analysis for the 114 corridor? Or do we want to hold off till the next meeting to do it? Because again, as Chris said, we have time on this project.
Well, Andrew just did that though, didn't he? Isn't that what you just did, Andrew? Didn't you run through all the transportation elements and say, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one are included. This one isn't.
So what I mean, well, no. I mean, I didn't do it in a comprehensive way. I gave a few.
No, I know that. Right.
Yeah, I gave a few examples. I mean, I think that I'd have to take a look at the agenda and see how you framed it. But yeah, I mean, you might want to do it at what I would suggest to do, just in terms of process, and if someone has a different idea, that's fine. I maybe just, now that you've established you want to take a closer look at it, I think the best way to do it is, between I forget who was on like the transportation subcommittee. I'm sure you were, John.
Yeah, John,
yeah.
Meredith.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe if you guys want to take a closer look and propose which strategies you think are being met by the by the Route 114 corridor, and bring that forward to the next meeting for consideration by the broader committee and vote to approve that. I think that makes sense.
Sure. My point was, didn't you just do that though, Andrew? Didn't you just sort of run through those strategies for us and say, yes, no?
Yeah, I think I went through a couple, but you'd probably want to take a closer look to make sure there wasn't anything I was missing. And frankly, there might be a couple here and there that are not even in the transportation, like the land use potentially. I'd have to take a look.
Can I suggest, this is George, can I suggest that as a matter of process, we just say the subcommittees will each look at the strategies within their subcommittee and identify the ones that are that the current plan supports, and identify any that may well just say whether or not the plan as it was presented on October 28th is consistent or not with each strategy. And I think most of us are going to say it's just, it doesn't apply. For instance, housing. I mean, I'll go through and I'll look at the strategies and consider it, but I'm pretty confident that I'm going to say that, you know, this plan doesn't affect any of the housing strategies. It's, the only subcommittee that's going to have any work is the transportation subcommittee.
That's fine. That's certainly a way to do it. I have to, I try to be careful myself with the difference between review and evaluation. I know as an advisory body, you know, our job is to review, and once again, the word evaluation comes up. I just don't know if that's our charge, is to be evaluating.
Well, I think
evaluate in terms of whether or not it's consistent with the recommendation in the master plan.
Yeah, okay, right. Well, my word for that is review, I guess.
Well,
evaluation tells me we're making a judgment on whether it's good, bad, or indifferent.
Whatever the appropriate verb is.
Well, I look at it a little differently, and I would take the word evaluation out of it in the sense that, like, and I don't have your mission statement in front of me, but I know that it speaks to, you know, tracking and promoting the progress of the master plan.
Yeah, right.
And so if there, let's just say offhand, let's just say there's 6 or 7 strategies, just for argument's sake, within the transportation bucket of strategies that the Route 114 project advances, if you will, then that's you confirming that the master plan is being advanced in this way, in these ways, through these strategies. Now, one could argue that, do you really need to do that? Because of course it's you know what I'm saying, like a major $36 million roadway improvement project in probably the busiest section of North Andover is of course going to advance transportation related master plan strategies. But if you want to refine it down to what are the strategies specifically, and then it makes sense. That would be my thought.
Yeah. Oh, sure. I guess my concern is the sense of limits. I mean, how far do we go to say this is a heck of a good application? This is a nicely done application, or this one doesn't look so good.
I wouldn't even go there.
Is that our charge?
I wouldn't even go there. I would literally just pick the ones that fall in the bucket of this is advancing the Route 114, and then everything else, even if there's one out there that is again somehow, and I don't think there is one, but even if there was one out there, one of these strategies that it was in complete diametric opposition to, you don't even have to mention it.
That would be completely appropriate.
Because there could be another thing that the town is doing or the state's doing to address that other strategy that is not being addressed.
Well, I'll just remembering from when we did the one we evaluated Royal Crest. We said, is there a direct or is there a benefit? Is there an indirect or a direct benefit? Or not benefit? Is there a direct or indirect impact?
Right.
And is it positive, negative, neutral? And I think if we use those same guidelines, that way we're maintaining consistency, application to application.
Yeah, see, that's where I think it gets problematic.
Do the same way, because that's how the whole idea of our framework when we came up with it is that we'd have a consistent process to repeat over time, because so we weren't cherry picking and looking at things with different lenses all the time. It was, we came up with the framework. It's just a list of the master plan strategies. what we did independently in our groups was say which ones within each subgroup we think apply. When some were indirect or direct, to your point, John, and then positive, negative. But that just
Yeah.
it was a very kind of logical application. We weren't evaluating, we were applying the master plan using a consistent framework every
Agreed.
time.
And,
And
and
if
I
we
know,
start
Kelly.
deviating because of nuances, I think
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
where are we
no,
going?
I knew I found myself overthinking it, and I had to like step back, and I said, no, let's just look. Here's a goal: more sidewalks. Does this plan provide more sidewalks? Yes, positive, direct impact.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's all I personally, that's what I'm envisioning we do in this case.
Yeah, and keep in mind, all we're doing when in the past when we used the frame, all we did was apply the framework to whatever we were working against. Applied the master plan framework just to help break it out to the master plan. We never, so other people did, but we never drew a positive or negative conclusion to any framework we applied. We were looking at it strategy by strategy with no end conclusion. And I
Yeah.
think and we need to be we should stick with it because as a group, that's what we decided. If we
Yeah.
want to change it, I think that's sort of a separate conversation. We have to decide if that didn't work and we need to adjust. But I thought that was kind of what gave our framework made it logical. It was just an
Yeah.
application of a framework, not an evaluation.
Yeah,
It's
it was a clinical review.
Yeah. And that for what it's worth, it was just the master plan. And it may or may not be good in totality, but from a master plan application of the framework, that was our 7 cents.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But
The
again,
term I'll use is objective analysis, and that's it.
but again, are the 3 categories? Remind me what they are. Is it positive, negative, and neutral? Is that what you said?
Does it meet the goal in a positive manner, a negative manner, or a neutral manner? It's not. Is what's being proposed positive in regards to meeting the element, the stated goal? Is it a yes or a no type thing?
Yeah. So that's what I guess that's what I'm saying is that. Okay.
Are we better off framing it that way, yes or no, versus positive, negative?
That's what I'm saying. So I can appreciate that we want to maintain consistency. Kelly made a really good point there. The problem is that we're only a year into our progress as a committee, and maybe that wasn't, looking forward, maybe that isn't the consistent framework we want to apply. Maybe we want to pivot and decide the consistent framework we want to apply is really a binary yes, no. Is it advancing a master plan priority or not? Because I would hesitate to say the framework that was applied the first time out is the one we want to go for, from here on out, no questions asked. I think it's worth reevaluating and saying, is this what we want to do going forward, or is there a better way forward?
That's a good point. We should reevaluate. But I guess, John, what I would defer to you is possibly because any feedback that I had gotten, particularly from the selectman or town manager, is that the way no one had any. Because I solicited, and Chris, it'd be great to hear if you'd heard anything else. Solicited feedback to change that framework, and there wasn't any from either of the main consumers to change.
Right.
So I think it's absolutely essential that we have some flexibility in how we move, and I, in talking just now, Andrew's comments resonate with me. Was if you put the word positive or negative, it's very easy for someone off the street to read that and misconstrue it. I think if we, and it's semantics, but I think if we change that to a yes or a much more clear cut yes or no, and maybe another column just to have a little bit. And maybe another column provides a little bit of explanation or nuance to that. But I think if we switch it to more of a yes or no, it actually helps us from an objectivity standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's an answer to the question, does this support the master plan? Yes or no? But I think there ought to be a third option, which is neutral. It's not I mean, no implies it's not supporting the master plan. I take that as negative, although we don't want to use that term, but it's.
You could say not applicable.
Yeah.
Well, that would be a good neutral term. I think is not applicable.
Not applicable. We didn't even show it on the sheet though. Things that weren't applicable we removed it. We didn't on our framework. We didn't on the frameworks that we did
Yeah.
in the past.
Yeah, we
So
truncated
we
the list.
If the decision is made, the decision is made as to whether it's not applicable or not, whether it supports it. And then.
I think George, part of the reason we took out the ones that were not applicable, it made it easier to digest. We can keep a full list and put not applicable.
That's fine. I'm just saying that before you took it out, it was assessed to be not applicable.
Okay.
And that's fine to take it out, but
We can just put a blanket statement that says elements that were found not applicable have been removed from this list.
The bottom line is when you write your final, so obviously the end goal of this is to report this out and to provide it in one of your future quarterly reports to the select board. And so I envision, if you're going to do this, the final product saying, we looked at the, we applied our framework to the Route 114 mass project. Here are the master plan strategies that this project advances. And let's say there's 7 at the end of it that you find that it advances. That's it. You just list those 7. Nothing else has to be mentioned about the rest of the report. You don't have to tick off which one it doesn't.
why wouldn't we put the ones that that should but doesn't? Because it just to sit there and
Ones
list
it kind of
like
works against.
Yeah, why filter? Why dilute it down so much? Otherwise, it just I feel like we're kind of become a mouthpiece versus actually applying a framework.
So any project that's put out there for anything, how many strategies is any project supposed to advance? Is every transportation project supposed to advance every transportation strategy? So
Not my understanding. So that's why we don't list them all, right? There's things that aren't applicable, right? We kind of, but we all saying the same thing. Like we look at all the strategies. There's 100 of them. Let's say there's only 20 that relate that impact them. Then we look at the ones that we think sort of impact, but we're not just saying a list of here's the ones that are impacted. We look, at least what we've done in the past, John. So you're at a point we need to make sure that this is still what we want to do. But there's a list of 20 that are impacted, and whether we say yes, no, neutral. And we had examples of this in our past one where neutral is a group we decided made sense, or positive, negative, neutral. We're looking at them all.
Yeah.
I mean,
Because there might be something where there's something in the master plan, it intersects it, but it may be working against the intent of that master plan line item. And we should just say that. No judgment. It's just both sides of the ledger.
And I'll bring up case in point, when we did Royal Crest, I know there were a couple of elements that we found were working against the elements of the master plan, if I remember correctly. So I wouldn't preclude us from stating those. If in the case that we do have ones, we should be identifying, because again, it's an objective analysis. So if there is, and hopefully there aren't, but if in case we do want to report those,
Well, I'm sorry. I don't remember us saying that there was parts of the Royal Crest plan that were inconsistent or counter to master plan objectives.
There was one of the frameworks.
And let me just finish. I think we should be open to the possibility that could occur. That's why we want to keep a no option available. But I don't remember there being any for Royal Crest.
It might not have been Royal Crest, but it was one of them that we did, and this is all part we all should be able to find.
I know what it was. It was the housing moratorium.
Yeah, there were some positives, negatives, and neutrals. Yeah,
it was the housing moratorium where we had some positives and we had some negatives.
And there were some negatives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like I said, we want to absolutely within the framework, and again, we can tweak it as Andrew said. But I think, in general, we should have, does it advance the goals? Does it work against the goals?
Yeah.
Is it?
And that's it.
And and then everything else is not applicable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I would recommend that, let's go through this, right? Let's break up into our subgroups. Like I said, the vast majority outside the transportation ones are going to be not applicable. But you might find one or two, and if you do, report them back. Yeah. and we don't have to, you know, we can discuss this at the next meeting and see where we come up with it. And do we want to keep it as basic as we just explained? Do we want to tweak it? Let's evaluate amongst ourselves what the information is that we have, and then how we want to move forward presenting it. But let's do the work itself to get something started for us to react to. If that works for everyone.
Yeah, it's fine.
That's right.
Okay.
Let's go on.
All right.
Open up a can of worms there, didn't I? Sorry.
If it wasn't going to happen now, it's going to happen later. So,
So John, you'll just make sure that it's just broadly agreed upon right now that the subcommittees will meet behind the scenes, and then you guys will be able to discuss it and put it on paper by next meeting, or maybe even John, you may want to ahead of time have a draft of what the applicable, non-applicable, all that stuff. Okay.
Absolutely. No, I'll probably follow up this meeting with a follow-up email amongst our group as long as we're okay with that. Just sending you a link to the information I'll send you the link to the 114 website and a link to the master plan elements that we have. So just so you have the information.
Okay, just wanted to confirm. You guys can move on.
Yep,
Sorry.
absolutely. So the last thing I had on old business was there was a meeting, or I believe, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong here. There was a community preservation committee meeting in which there was some discussion with the potential to dovetail with some of what we've discussed prior, maybe or maybe not the rail trail. So I'm going to open this to you, Dan.
Yep. So we were supposed to have this meeting in November and we didn't. It's been pushed back to December 9th. So lucky for you all, you still have the opportunity to go. So the Community Preservation Committee is going to have a meeting where they're going to hear, they're going to have a public meeting, a public hearing, essentially, where anyone who wants to come can say, these are the needs of the public, and this is what I think the Community Preservation Committee should be investing in or spending their money in, or how they should be, guiding projects that are applying for funding. Or they can come forward and say, like, these are some ideas my organization, board, committee, department have, and, are any of these viable? Should the CPC, does the CPC have any interest in any of these projects? And, basically, in the past, where the CPC has typically just accepted applications from December to January, this is sort of an opportunity to get in there and say, have this idea. What do you think? Is it eligible? What should I add to this application to make it, a viable project? So there's a few things going on there, but essentially, people are encouraged to go to either say, hey, I think the CPC should be doing this, or hey, I want to do this and I'm looking for the CPC's help.
Dan, are the meetings in person or on Zoom?
The meetings are in person. We always have a virtual option, but I think I'm the only one that does that. So preferably in person at town hall.
Okay.
We're going to be doing a bunch of promotion for it, so I'm sure you'll get stuff in town email and see it on Facebook and whatnot.
Perfect. Thank you.
So, so the big one I had today for new business was the website. Following up on what we started last time was the website. I'm trying to bring it up here. I don't know if that's something. I don't know if you can share the screen, Andrew, or not. The master plan elements spreadsheet that I created.
Yes, I can. Give me 1 second here.
Yep. So while he's doing that, so basically what I did is I took that like, from way back when we did the prioritization. Here we
Can you
go.
guys see this?
Yep. Let's expand my screen here. There we go. So can you zoom out a little bit?
Sure.
Or actually, we could, maybe hide some of the columns if possible. I don't.
What are you trying to see?
So I added the column all the way over on the right.
Oh, okay. Status. Okay. I don't know how to manipulate this very well, so
Okay.
my apologies.
Yep. If we all just bring up the agenda on our own computers, and then we can click on the link.
Yep.
We'll open that
If that works,
document in our screen.
if that works, absolutely.
Good. Go on, George.
Oh, a second. Yeah. There we go. Okay,
I'm also hiding some stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of bringing it.
Yeah, I got you.
I mean, is that helpful right there, what I just did?
Yeah. Yep.
You can see the
Absolutely.
strategy, and you can see this last column.
Yeah. So, again, circling back to when we first started out on this thing, I found, where we went through and so one thought I had was to keep things incredibly simple was on our webpage, basically provide a link to what you're seeing on the screen here. And then column K I added was basically current status or a level and enactment. And Andrew, if you scroll down to the transportation ones, because I filled a lot of those, I took a stab at it. This is all working. This is none of this is concrete. So element 35 under transportation was adopt a complete streets policy, and et cetera, et cetera. So in bold, I have it's complete. The town's complete streets policy was formally adopted by the select board on May 10th, 2021. Done, signed, sealed, delivered. Okay. And then for other elements, that are ongoing or pending, I put something in relative to what's applicable, what's been done, not necessarily specifics, unless absolutely necessary. But so if you see what I said, ongoing in concert with the with our note, now we have a complete streets policy. It's ongoing in conjunction with that. We have the 125 corridor development plan that plays into some of this. So that's kind of what I was envisioning. I'm going to open it up for discussion. If you agree, maybe you have a better idea. You like it, you hate it, whatever. But I want to at least get a discussion going.
Sure. Can I begin the discussion?
Go for it.
All right. I sent John and Meredith a suggestion that does just this. I added a sort of a color coding suggestion that on our page, all 103 of these items elements are listed, and we have some sort of color coding that would determine or reveal to the public whether one is complete. As John just mentioned, he used the example of the complete streets. I think Holly mentioned last meeting something about preservation was a strategy that was complete. So a color that would reveal complete, another color to code incomplete, though in process, and a third color to no action. Hey, now I acknowledge that with three colors, this is just a starting point for the conversation. Each of you may have three more colors to add to determine the status of each one of these elements as we look at them. But underneath, and John did it with a column to the right, I envisioned a space underneath each strategy narrative that would explain, that would further elaborate what we meant by whatever color we designated. And and the column would also include, the elaboration would also include connections, as John just did, to upcoming meetings. So the upcoming meeting for the Complete Streets, for example, would be listed underneath as part of the elaboration for the Complete Streets status. So anyway, it's a sort of a visual. My idea was that we make this a visual representation of progress, essentially, that the people in North Andover can be assured that the publicly voted on master plan is in fact guiding the development of the town, and that the elected officials and the directors of the various departments are doing as the voters have doing as the voters expect. And here's, just look at the color, right? Just look at the colors of these, and you look at the colors, and the predominant color would be, no doubt, the middle one, which is let's see, pardon me, sorry, let me get my three colors. Complete, and the second color would be incomplete, though in process. That's probably the dominant color. And of course, the third one for no action just yet. But there's plenty of room, if we leave it, to elaborate. That's too simple to just put it into a color. There has to be some elaboration, and there has to be the column that John put in, which is what's happening, with the links to where we go from here, or what's happening currently, meetings to attend, that sort of thing. So anyway, it's color coding. We know what this thing is going to look like. It's going to be dominated by the middle color of inaction, things that are in progress. And I think the voters will see that positively, and they'll recognize that the Master Plan Implementation Committee is in fact working with the town to make sure that the planners are living up to the expectation of the people who put this plan into action. And that would be our page. Our page would have these color-coded elements for the public to see. So there's a start to the conversation.
John, can I make a quick comment here?
Absolutely.
Go for it. Sorry.
So you've got your buddy on your lap there, so hold on, I'm tight. Okay, so Gina and I mentioned this a little earlier in this conversation, actually, this meeting. Gina and I think Dan also we did some work on something similar to this. We put out a spreadsheet, and we had bullet points in a column that sort of aligned with what we felt were the various strategies here. And I think there was more work to probably have been done at that point. We thought maybe it was going to be an iterative, ongoing process. I think a lot of and I think one mistake, or not a mistake, but something that I think that we're hung up on as a committee, perhaps, and it's just my thought, is this idea of complete versus incomplete. I think that, that one strategy you have there that is complete, the Complete Streets policy, I don't think there's a ton of strategies that are that black and white, that are just like, they are very focused and narrow, and they can be complete with one assignment. I think a lot of them are very wide ranging and broad, and you can literally go through up until the point where we come up with another master plan. You can continue to work on them, and the next master plan that we have should also include them as a strategy, because it's always evolving. It's something that we're always going to be involved in. So you just continually add to it, saying all of the tasks and projects that apply to those various strategies, but the list can keep growing. So long-winded way of saying is, I think this format is good, but I think it's tough to confine it to just a spreadsheet. I think it might have to be like, and this is where, Dan working with, Sarah, or Sarah Brush, our communications director, or somebody in our IT department, maybe we just need to like break out different sub web pages of the master plan implementation committee page. I'm not trying to create work here, so if Dan, shoot me down, these are terrible ideas, but the transportation strategies, one of the strategies might require having a bunch of bullet points that we can throw on the page and keep adding to it. And then on the rare occasion, you might have something like this complete streets policy where you can say, nope, that was just a very narrow thing we wanted to do and we're done and it's complete. That's not always going to be the case.
So if I may, I that's the question I had, Andrew. Is it worth breaking this down further by subject, possibly? And yeah, I mean, the one that, so where I bolded out the one for the complete streets is like, okay, yeah, that's one of the few that we can absolutely pick off, done, and it's good to see, you see that it's been completed. So, but my thought was, as far as like in the descriptions for like ongoing, for instance, as projects and developments come about, we can cite those in these columns. So like where I have the Route 125 corridor development plan. If there's another project that comes along and we can provide a link to it, it's a running list. We build on these, as stuff comes about, it fits into this. So we have the 114 corridor improvements, we have the Route 125 corridor improvements. As projects come about, we cite them here as support for the justification of where these projects stand in town. These are the examples of things that are going on that show that we are meeting these goals, or not getting notches in our belt as far as addressing these things.
I raised my hand, so I'm going to go.
Sorry, go ahead, Karen.
So I would say, John, I completely agree. The content I think is fantastic. I think at one point we tried to do this, and I don't know, I think we fizzled or we thought it was too hard. But I think this is just kind of for each strategy, done, not done, ongoing. And we had talked about before that some of these are years, maybe not necessarily, especially with how they're worded, right? It's hard to mark any of them complete, but at least to say it's ongoing, something started, in listing like you did here. And I'll be honest, I don't care about the format. I think I think maybe that might be somewhere we can lean on Sarah to figure out, what's the best way to present it. But I think this content is 100% spot on, right? By strategy of the master plan, what's started, what's not started, right? Things that aren't, and showing like what are the different components that they're working on. I think it's great. I think the big thing we need to be careful with is, whether it's ongoing or complete, is that's information. If we're putting our name on it as the committee, that, how do we decide something's complete, right? Is that something we vote on? Is that what is that? But.
And I think in the spirit of maintenance, so to speak, being thoughtful about keeping it really succinct, like what you've done, John, and, like if you want to drill deeper, kind of go to the master location, not our location, but where the actual, if people want to deep dive, kind of making it easy for people to help get them to where they should go. Because we got to be careful we don't suddenly become like overlapping and redundant. Two different places that are getting kind of grain. Not this is nice high level. If you want to know more, on an XY, like, the 125 corridor development plan, which I see you have as a hyperlink, click here, go there. I think we're just going to discipline ourselves to not become the system of record, so to speak.
You basically, the way, and I've always found, especially when you're presenting something to the public, is if they click on it and read it, you want it to be as self-evident and self-explanatory as possible.
Yep.
So you error on the generic side here, but again, as we said, for more in depth, you click, if you can provide a link to give you additional information, you provide it.
I agree.
That's my, again, this is how I'm approaching it. That's my thoughts. I'm open to discussion.
So, John, let me just ask a question though. This focus is primarily toward, let's say, toward the public, to let them know what we're doing and the progress that is being made or whatever. To what extent might this also be helping us with our own kind of internal focus of what we want to be concentrating on? Which of these strategies we want to now start taking up and working on? Is there some way we can?
Well, is that actually in our scope? And Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if that's necessarily what we want to be charged with doing, or a task that we want to take. We're not, we're not necessarily the keepers of the master plan.
No.
We're the ones that are looking at it to make sure that, to watch out for it.
I don't want to try to interpret what Stan was saying, but it sounds like so John, I do think it is within your purview, in the sense that if there are strategies in here that you discover have not been addressed or adequately addressed, or even maybe are totally not on this town's radar for whatever the reason might be, then those are things you can bring to the attention of the select board through your reporting. And it's similar to the complete streets policy, for instance. It was definitely on our radar, because when I came in, I noticed, okay, we don't have that, let's do that. But it hadn't actually been acted upon. And then you guys suggested, or made a recommendation in one of your reports. And then not long after that, we were able to move forward, and the select board was very interested in moving it forward. So I would say, similarly, if there's other strategies in here that really haven't been lifted off the ground yet, you can make note of that, and if the board agrees, or this committee agrees, that it's a high priority that the town should be looking at or do something about to move it in a forward direction, you can express that through your reporting to the select board.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I would say, I'm sorry, I'm talking over. I think Sean was wanting to say something. Let me just get this in real quick. If we can at least evaluate, go through this process and say, all right, is it done? Is it ongoing? Or is it nothing's been acted on? Identify those first, and then we can have an internal discussion relative to the ones that haven't been touched yet, and say, all right, what's feasible, what's something that this group can look into and make a, what's within our purview to make a recommendation on to the board of the select board, to possibly kickstart or whatnot.
Let me just kind of offer this quick little backup. I do like how we start off this conversation about trying to heat map this a little bit. I think that's a good way to sort of prompt people and give people perspective. I don't want to lose track of that. As it relates to the select board, my general impression is draw our attention to the things that you think, we think, make sense. And this committee is the citizens' pointy end of the spear on all of this. So I don't see, we can overthink this. I think it basically, the select board wants to be tuned into where it's going, how it's coming along. Is there something that we should have a heads up on? And if we have a clear input, whatever that is, to share that. I mean, I think those are kind of the three things sitting, with that board that we're looking for. What do we need to be attentive to? Do you have something that you can share with us as valuable? And thirdly, we are, this committee, the citizens' front edge of all this. So how do we just tie into all that?
Yeah, I mean,
so maybe we're just, as I said, maybe we're just overthinking it a little bit. As Andrew said, some of this is ongoing, right? it may be settled, and then 5 years from now, it may come back. It may change. 10 years from now, yep, we accomplished that, and now we've got it. Now we have changes.
But Chris, this is really the process that we started out with, where we took 103 strategies and said to ourselves, geez, that's way too many. We can't deal with that. We've got to, pick a subset of that and start to do it. Now it seems like we're at the point in the process where in each of the areas, we can start to just do an iterative process where we keep going back through those strategies and say, okay, do we know any more about any of these? Has anything changed about any of these? Have these become more important? What can we be doing in our respective areas, be it land use or open space, whatever it is, right? But just sort of keep going through that in kind of an iterative process and going back and, periodically, once every few months, say, what do we think now? Do we think anything different? Has anything changed? Have priorities changed? Are people more interested in something now than they were 6 months ago? So, that might just be part of the ongoing process here for this committee. Is just keep going through the list, our little subsets, and say, is anything new? Is there any new priority here that we ought to be trying to bring out, as you point out, to the select board?
Right.
Say, you might want to think about putting this on your radar. This is something that 6 months or a year ago may not have been there, but now it might be. So.
Listening to you people, what goes through my mind is what we're talking about, I think, is that each of those cells essentially becomes a status report. A very abbreviated, but it's just a status. And so we could update, that could be updated more or less continuously, although we're not going to. Anyway, I would say take the matrix as you've got it there, John, but widen the column that you've added. What is that, column K? I can't see the letter.
Yeah.
Widen it so there's more room. And just think of it as what is the current status?
Well, so that's
also we shouldn't forget that way back at the beginning, Gene and Dan and Andrew went through and they put in comments. They created a column and put in comments, and those comments are still valid. We should incorporate that into this matrix that you've created.
So George, I'll say those columns are here. They're just hidden right now, just so we can see everything on the screen.
Yeah.
So I didn't delete. I purposely, but I absolutely agree. This is intended to be flexible and constantly updated as needed. It's not a static. It's not intended to be a static thing, which is why I kind of want to leave it in a worksheet format versus an actual web page format. It's easier to update. But yeah, absolutely. There's an inherent flexibility that I envision that as things come to the table, it's easy to update the applicable elements if needed.
And maybe that's when we just kind of start out with it. Right? What's simple? Let's get something out there.
Yeah.
Right. Is it the spreadsheet? And we've got the column K, which has the status of the update, and then maybe if we've completed a framework already, we have a link to the framework so people can see it. Because that's an artifact that we're producing as part of public record. We're presenting that to the planning board and the steering committee, and just go with that. Start there, boom, and then maybe on the if we want to start, the next fancy step is total number of strategies. Right? There's 103, 5 in process, 1 done, 6 we haven't even looked at yet. But and then we can get better. Is anybody looking at it? Get some feedback, and let's just start simple. Right, let's MVP this one and just kind of.
Like I said, we needed a starting point.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think the content is great. We just got to figure out how to, how are people going to use it.
Right.
So if we get something out there, and then Sarah might have some good idea. This is, I like as a citizen, I like the content she puts out there now. So she might have some ideas on how to engage with people. Like, set out the little vignettes that she sends out sometimes and posts on Facebook. She might be able to help us. On some of that, I have no idea. But
if she thinks it's color coding the rows, to the effect Jay was mentioning, if that's a benefit, and that's a simple thing. Like I said, it's a foot in the door. It's where do we how do we want to go from here? But it sounds like we're all in relative agreement that this is maybe the easiest way to go at this point. And
Yep.
Backing up a bit as far as we had commented that all right, we evaluated the complete streets policy that Andrew mentioned. Apologies for the lousy metaphor, but as the fruit ripens on the tree, what's the next lowest hanging fruit that we can pick off?
Yep.
And when you're ready, John, I don't want to brush this conversation away too quickly if folks still want to talk about this, but there's another piece in terms of promotion that I can just quickly bring up.
Go for it.
From when you go. Yeah. Well, it's just that, and this is actually, I have to credit Holly with this idea. She had reached out and mentioned that this could be something we might want to look into, which is that the town has a quarterly newsletter that it produces, and I think it puts in with, I don't know if it's with your tax bills or your water bill.
Yep.
Water bill.
Yes.
Bill. Okay, so now Sarah is managing the curation of that newsletter, and she basically puts out an email out to all the department heads to say, okay, if you guys have any blurbs you want to put in here as an update for your department or something going on, let us know or let me know and I can put it in there.
Mm-hmm.
So we can certainly, and I don't know if there's anything so she has a call out right now. And I think that her deadline is like, I have to go back and look. I want to say it's like November 24th, like next week sometime. But the point is that once there's something concrete that we can, publicize, like whether it's the latest, recommendation by the Master Plan Implementation Committee, or a link to its last quarterly report, or wherever you want to call it, we can put that information out through the newsletter.
Yeah. Yep. I like that.
To which I'd say, depending on how fast we can address, I don't know if this is feasible that we can address what we're, with the status report. But I would envision at some point that'd be something we'd absolutely want to promote to the public. Hey, Master Plan Committee's been working. This is our current status for the, on behalf of the town. Please come take a look, type thing.
Maybe even just at this time around, just a blurb of, hey, there is a master plan committee. Hey, we are doing, just two
I had
bullets
actually
on.
I had actually brought this up at last meeting and it kind of fell flat. So thank you, Andrew, for bringing it up again. But there are things that are completed. So I don't think we need to dive into this huge 103-step plan and reevaluate and do all that. There are things that are completed, and I think we just update on those. I don't think we reinvent the wheel. I don't think we make this more complicated than it needs to be. I think we go with what's done, i.e. the monuments. There is something on the town website where you can find the monuments. Here it is. Boom. This is done. Boom. Here it is. I don't think we need to go through and reevaluate and come up with a status plan. I think it's our first one. It's here where the master plan committee introduce ourselves, as you just said, Kelly, and list the 3 things that are done and move on to next quarter. I don't think it needs to be a reevaluate, a status check, a selectman's update. I think the information's already there and completed, and we just need to pull it out.
Yeah.
I just think it's that simple. So sorry, I'm not trying to cut anybody off or anything. I just think it's something we don't need to overcomplicate. And it gets the word out and it gets people knowing what's done. And I think it'll start driving people hopefully to this document that we are working so hard on.
Yeah.
Holly, you really helped us weed through the bullshit on that for sure. Thank you.
Sorry, we're an hour and 20 minutes into this and there's just been a lot of talking, and I'm, as the note taker right here, I'm like, okay, so that 40 minutes boils down to 3 sentences. So let's just keep moving.
Yeah, all right.
That's fair.
All right, so moving forward, for as far as if this is a route we want to take, who wants to take responsibility for filling in the blanks? do we want to break out to the subcommittees and take a stab at that and get it populated? That's kind of how I can see it being done, but you know, up to you guys. Tell me what you think.
Subcommittees.
Okay. All right. So as a follow up, we'll have a follow up email with a link to this and say,
Yep.
meet with your subgroups, and and enter some wording, and then Andrew, Meredith, myself can go through it and just take a look at it, and we'll have it ready hopefully in time for the next meeting. So, all right.
Word of caution, and or just pointing this out. It's just that, so there is a column in there. I think I when I was trying to condense this a little bit for everyone's viewing ability, I may have hidden it, but there's a sort of a column that describes the which departments or department heads might have some level of responsibility over the various strategies. So it might require some work on your respective parts to reach out to some folks at the town hall. And Dan, myself, and Jean can try to be as helpful as possible in pointing you in the right direction. And in a lot of cases, they point right back to us. But where certain things, for instance, are really squarely in the realm of like DPW. So to get an idea of whether or not a strategy has been addressed, you might have to talk to DPW or someone who works in the area of conservation. And luckily, you guys all have, a few of you have different areas of expertise. Like I know Sean's on the Concom, Kelly's on the planning board. So that's helpful. Holly, works closely. I think she's on the Youth and Rec Council. So, you guys have some easily accessible resources you can plug into, but just as a heads up that you may need to reach back out to folks and have some conversations.
Okay.
Yep.
Duly noted. Just to keep things moving at this point. Again, for informational purposes, this Wednesday, Dan, there's a meeting at the Senior Center. That's a Complete Streets participatory workshop. I don't know if you want to chime in on that real quick, Dan. Again, it's just for informational purposes for the people in the group. But since we've been engaged in getting the town to adopt a policy, now the town's moving forward with it. So take it away, Dan.
Yeah. So next step is the prioritization plan. There's nothing in the plan yet. We need input. So what people tell us they think should be a Complete Streets project is, not inherently going to be in the plan, but is a large part of what makes up the plan. So we would really like people to come to the Senior Center, 6:30 p.m. this Wednesday. If you can make it, you'll get a brief explainer on what Complete Streets are, what they can fund. You get to sit down with your fellow residents and talk about what issues there are, what you'd like to see, and then bring it all back and sort of break that down into more concise project ideas. And then we run with that and put together a plan and bring it back to the public. So Wednesday, 6:30, if you can make it. Awesome.
I'll be there. It's I'm getting weird feedback. All right, sorry. And then as far as future activities for the group, there's a question: do we want to apply the framework to additional initiatives? For instance, we had the watershed protection plan that was just approved, Dan, I believe, for the lake. Whether or not we want to evaluate that for any reason. And the same thing with the approved Route 125 corridor plan. So just thoughts for movement next meeting, possibly. Speaking of which, we need to figure out a next meeting date. So I don't know, Andrew, what the calendar has open.
Yeah, let me take a look here. First of all, I'm going to stop presenting if that's okay with everybody. And then, so if we look literally a month ahead, we're looking at Monday the 13th of December, which is a select board night. So I know that's always kind of a little bit of a struggle. The week after that is the 20th, and that is the week of, Christmas is technically, all the way at the end of that week on Saturday, but maybe we want to avoid that week and obviously the week after. So I would say the 13th is our best bet, maybe, unless people can't do that. Monday the 13th at 5.
Can make it work.
Still double headers. All good.
Just get them out of the way, Chris.
You didn't have one tonight. We had to pay you.
That's right.
So
Makeup.
All right. So I guess we're good for that date then.
Okay.
that works for everyone?
I'm sorry, you blanked out on my computer. Did you say the 13th, December 13th?
Yes.
Yes, Monday the
Okay.
13th at 5.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Oops, I screwed up. All right. In that case, I think we've hit everything and then some. Someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded?
Second,
All right. Take a roll call and then we're out of here. Hopefully. George Keller,
Aye. Yes.
Chris Nobley,
Yes.
Meredith Barnes Cook,
Yes.
Holly Williams,
yes.
Dan Lippert,
Yes.
Kelly Cormier,
Yes.
Jay Dowd,
Yes.
Don McDonough.
Yes.
John Strauss says yes, and I don't hear anybody dissent, so we're approved.
Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody.
All right.
Awesome. Thanks,
Happy
everybody.
Thanksgiving.
Thank
Happy
you.
Thanksgiving.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.